The Marine training camp was alive with chaos. Recruits shouted as they sprinted across the field, boots pounding the dirt in unison. Drill instructors barked orders that cut through the humid air, pushing the young men to their breaking point. Sweat, grit, and fear blended into one brutal symphony of endurance. But through it all, no one noticed the old man. He sat quietly on a bench at the far edge of the parade ground, a faded jacket draped over his frail shoulders, a baseball cap pulled low over his brow. In his hand, he gripped a dented thermos, sipping now and then as if he had all the time in the world. The recruits thought he was just another civilian worker, maybe a retired groundskeeper with nowhere else to be. Some even joked about him when the drill instructors weren't looking. "That ghost again," one whispered. "Old man probably doesn't even know where he is." But then it happened. A young recruit jogging past glanced at him, his eyes lazily drifting toward the old man's sleeve where the jacket had slipped. For just a second, the fabric shifted enough to reveal a tattoo inked deep into weathered skin, an insignia that wasn't ordinary. The recruit froze mid-step. His face drained of color. His knees buckled and he stumbled backward as though he'd seen a ghost. That's impossible," he stammered, his voice cracking. The other recruits stopped, confusion spreading. Drill instructors stormed over, demanding answers, but the recruit just pointed a trembling hand at the old man. Every head turned. The old man slowly raised his eyes, and for the first time, they saw the mark carved into his flesh, an emblem that should have only existed in classified history books. The parade ground fell silent. The drill instructors marched up, barking at the recruit for halting formation, but when their eyes fell on the tattoo, their tone faltered. One instructor leaned closer, squinting, his voice dropping into disbelief. "No way, that's Force Recon, but not just any unit. That's..." His words trailed off. The old man rolled his sleeve back down, as if the glimpse of ink had betrayed too much. He sighed and tried to stand, leaning heavily on his cane. "Just forget it," he muttered. "I don't belong here anymore." But the camp wasn't ready to forget. The recruits whispered furiously, their adrenaline still pumping. A few pulled out their phones before being shouted down by instructors. The emblem was older than any of them. They'd seen references to it in training manuals, but it was always listed under decommissioned units, legends spoken of in hushed tones. The senior drill instructor, a hard-nosed master sergeant with a chest full of ribbons, finally approached the old man directly. "Sir, with respect, I have to ask."
"Who are you?"
The old man's lips curved into a tired smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Who I was doesn't matter. Who I am now is just a man trying to be left alone." But the tattoo had already spoken louder than words. The recruit who had first spotted the tattoo stepped forward, still pale and shaken. His hands trembled at his sides. I know that mark," he whispered. "My grandfather used to tell me about a mission. A black op nobody was supposed to talk about. He said only one man made it back. He said the man carried that exact tattoo." Gasps rippled through the group. The drill instructors exchanged glances, their discipline faltering under the weight of something none of them had prepared for. The old man's eyes softened at the recruit's words. For a moment it looked like he might deny it, laugh it off as confusion. But instead he lowered his gaze. "Your grandfather," he said slowly. "What was his name?" The recruit's throat tightened. "Corporal Daniel Harlow." The old man froze. His cane slipped slightly in his grip, and his voice grew rough with emotion. "I remember him." He looked at the young Marine with a gaze that pierced straight through him. "He was brave? Braver than most. He saved my life more than once." The recruit's breath hitched, his eyes welling with tears. "You knew him?" "Knew him?" The old man gave a small, broken laugh. "He died in my arms." The recruits fell silent. Even the drill instructors lowered their heads. The master sergeant finally spoke, his voice low, almost reverent. "Sir, if you really are who we think you are, you don't belong sitting on a bench. You belong in the history books." The old man shook his head. "History doesn't need ghosts. It needs heroes the living can look up to. I stayed in the shadows so men like your recruits could carry the torch without being weighed down by what came before." But the master sergeant wasn't satisfied. He gestured toward the recruits, whose eyes were locked on the old man with awe. "With respect, sir, these young men need to know the truth. They need to know men like you walked this earth. Otherwise, what are they even training for? The old man looked at the sea of young faces, their innocence barely hidden beneath the sweat and exhaustion. He saw in them echoes of his own youth, full of pride, fire, and ignorance of what war would carve into them. They think they want to know, he said quietly. But the truth is heavy. Too heavy for most. Still, as he looked at the trembling recruit who carried his grandfather's name in his heart, something shifted. That evening, long after training ended, the recruits gathered in the barracks. To their astonishment, the old man entered, guided gently by the master sergeant. The room fell silent. The old veteran sat on a stool at the center, his cane resting against his leg. For a long time, he said nothing, just looked at the young faces staring back at him. Then he spoke, his voice low but steady. We were called the men who didn't exist. Our missions were so deep in the black that even the government denied us. We went where no one else would go. We did what no one else could stomach. And every time we came back with fewer men than before. Until one day, I came back alone. The recruits leaned forward, hanging on every word. The tattoo, now visible in the glow of the room, seemed to burn with the weight of his memories. I buried brothers in silence. I walked away with scars no metal could cover. And I swore I would never step foot on a base again. But life has a way of bringing you full circle. He looked directly at the recruit who had recognized the tattoo. Your grandfather, he was the bravest Marine I ever knew. And now I see him in you. The young man's eyes filled with tears as he stood and saluted, his hand shaking. One by one, the recruits rose, their salutes sharp and unwavering. The old man rose slowly, his cane supporting his fragile frame. For the first time that day, he stood tall, not as a weary stranger, but as the warrior he once was. The master sergeant snapped to attention, his voice ringing through the room. Gentlemen, you stand in the presence of a legend. But the old man shook his head. No, you stand in the presence of tomorrow. My time has passed. Yours is just beginning. Don't remember me for the battles I fought. Remember me by fighting your own with honor. With that, he turned and began to walk out. The recruit's salutes following him like a tide. When the door closed behind him, silence filled the room, a silence heavy with respect, awe, and a newfound fire burning in their hearts. Outside, the old man paused beneath the dim glow of the barracks lights. He looked down at his tattoo one last time, then pulled his sleeve over it. And as he walked into the night, the words echoed in every recruit's mind. Heroes may fade, but legends, they live forever.